Hi, for today's video, we're going to try to fix the paint on this hood. Well, repaint it as cheaply as possible, but doing it in a really good way that will last. Now, for this video, I am not trying to paint match. There's a way that you can look up on your VIN number or on the door jambs, something like that. You can actually paint match the original to this, but it's expensive and we're trying to go the cheapest route possible. And if you look on this side, I mean, half the car doesn't match the original paint. So even if I ordered that and spent all the extra money for it, it's not gonna look great. So instead, I bought some cheap rust-oleum cans and we're gonna try it. This is the lineup we'll be using. We've got some self-etching primer. The self-etching actually kind of burns itself into the metal for lack of the technical function of it. And it adheres a lot better. So that's what we want after we sand that down and get it to bare metal. I've got just regular silver paint. Although looking at it side by side, that might not line up or match up that great, but it'll look better than running around with a rusty, flaking off hood. And then finished off, just some clear coat. So I said I was gonna do this the cheapest way possible, which is kind of a lie, because technically the cheapest way is just to take this and spray straight over your spots. I'll show you why the prep work is important here. So when we just spray straight onto it, that's the kind of quality that you're going to be left with. Which, to be honest, doesn't look as bad as I thought it would. And again, that would be your cheapest way to do it. You would need to mask off your headlights and the sides and definitely cover the windshield. Because if not, you're going to get overspray on there. And I don't know about you, but I like to be able to see where I'm driving. You might be wondering what we're going to use to sand it. I'm going to try the two different style orbital sanders that I've got. This is a cheapo Harbor Freight one. We've got 150 grit sandpaper on it. My expectations for that are not high. We're gonna try 5 minutes with each, and I doubt we're even gonna make it through the paint. And then I've got this brand new DeWalt one, the spinny one. I've never used it before, so I'm kind of excited to see how it does. But again, I'm not expecting a lot. My previous experience with these, they take a long time to sand through stuff. So we'll test that out. I mean, look at this, 5 minutes, and this isn't bare metal. That's primer of some sort coming through. Now, if we were using that to try to blend and just do a new clear coat, that would probably be the right tool. But I want to go to bare metal across the whole hood because of our rust. All right, we've got our other sander all set up here. I've got my timer up. Another 5 minutes. I did forget to mention that that DeWalt, I had 120 grit sandpaper on it. That was the only thing I had here, which is coarser than I wanted to do. because you can see all these little scratch lines in there, little micro scratches. I knew little bits of other times that I've painted, that will come through. I think we're all right here because this silver seems to just absorb it and be forgiving. Overall, that rotary style one definitely did a better job. This is what I want to use instead. This is a sandblaster attachment that goes into a pressure washer. That just clips into the end of the pressure washer. This hose in here runs off of here down into a bucket of sand, and it sucks it up and sandblast as you pressure wash, which is awesome because you get rid of the dust and you don't get smacked in the face with all the little pieces of sand. I think it was right around 30 bucks. And as long as you can get a pressure washer, this is a good cheap option. We'll find out and see how good it does. Maybe I'm lying. Our sand process here, you're gonna need, definitely need a bucket, but you can get away with just using one if you've got some kind of other tray. And an old window screen. We're gonna need this to lay down over here. And I've got a little bit of sand in here that will re-sift here. You're just gonna dump it over the screen. And that acts as a filter to get rid of any unwanted rocks. And you can just do that, tap it down. Now you see how that's going straight through, nice and easy? That's because this is completely dry. For this to work well, you're gonna need dry sand and you have to run it through the sift. So if you're gonna try this yourself, this step is really important. Here's a better example of some of the gunk on it. Actual pebble there. They said those will just get in there and get clogged up. So it's worth it to take the 10-15 minutes to sift through the sand and get rid of your junk like that. We've just about got everything set up here. We've got our tube here. We're gonna shove it as far into that sand as we can, which I only ended up with about half a bucket of sand because the rest of it's still wet. I've got it out trying to dry it in the sun right now in case I need more. Then we're gonna stretch that out a little bit. And then because we want to keep this sand dry, we got a bucket or the lid. I'm just gonna kind of pop that on there and put two little things of tape on it. Try to hold it in place. Okay, that should let enough sand up through still. We're gonna go ahead and hook this on. Yep, you just shove it on there. Work it in. All right, and I've already tested. This does fit my pressure washer. If you've got a really small pressure washer, that might not fit. Just a heads up. Progress report. Still have quite a bit of sand left. I think because this is an electric pressure washer and a little bit lower pressure than the actual gas ones, it's having a hard time sucking up an even amount. And we've probably got about 10 to 12 minutes worth of blasting there. And from that whole chunk down, we've got pretty well clean. There's a couple rust spots I want to hit better. But then I also tackled this whole spot almost down to bare metal. Again, probably need to go over it, but I'm digging it. So after much more effort than anticipated, this is the results that we've got. Definitely tried to blast the rust areas with it. Some of this is fresh just from it having been wet and sat out and oxidized a little bit. That sandblaster thing works a lot better if you have two people. Somebody needs to hold the end of it at just the right height in the sand and kind of move it around, and it'll suck in better. I only would get 10 to like 30 seconds of it working perfectly, and I could do a nice little chunk out of it, and then it would quit and I'd have to go mess around with it, do another little chunk. So it definitely took a lot longer than we wanted it to. But we're ready for the next step here. If I had some like 400 or 600 grit sandpaper, I'd probably run back over this again. But unfortunately, the pack that I bought, I didn't even look at it. I just saw the assorted sandpaper. It only goes up to 220 grit. And I know that that'll leave little scratches in there. And because I want it to look pretty good when it's done, I'm gonna skip that step. So what I've got here is some isopropyl alcohol. This looks super dirty, but I washed it. That's just old stains on it. I'm gonna soak down the rag with that alcohol and start wiping over it. This alcohol helps clean any kind of residue that's left behind, and it doesn't leave a residue of its own. So the paint should adhere really good after we're done here. All right, I'm gonna let this dry for a moment, go get a fresh rag, and then come back and wipe it off one more time. So I ended up wiping it down about 3 or 4 times, and still getting a little bit of dirt off of it. And I went ahead and moved the hood position here. I wanted to go vertical with it, because I believe that's how paint adheres better, if I'm remembering my school right. I decided to try the little handle thing for the spray paint, and I'm going to attempt to use that the same way as the actual spray gun. And that, you want to keep your wrist aimed forward as you're moving your arm, which is easier to say than do. But I'm going to go ahead and try spraying it on here and see how it turns out. Doing a lot of overspray. I'm going to throw a respirator on. I don't know if it's just because I'm out of practice and it's been a long time since I've actually painted something large, but it seems to be easier to do those short pulses, because when I did this big run up here, it was that close to making a paint run. All right, I'm going to try to put a real light second coat on it. Here's our next day results of the primer coat. You can see I wasn't exactly even with it. Well, we're ready to do the next step here, which I've got 2 trains of thought on. First, this is an experiment because I'm curious. Internet, as far as I can tell, all says that we need to sand this down, but it's spray paint, so I don't know that it has to. So I'm going to try to split the hood right about in half and we'll sand one side and try to do that the completely right way. And then this side, we're just gonna hit it with spray paint and see what it looks like. So for the stuff, I've got 400 and 600 grit. I'm gonna go with 600 grit on the primer. And then after we put our top coat on, I'll go to 1000 grit. I should have mentioned this earlier in the video, but I am not a professional auto body guy. I've had 3 days worth of paint school back when I was in the military. And then almost didn't get to use it like 3 times my career. So I am by no means a professional, just a guy that wants to do it myself. And I think this is a good example for you guys at home. We're ready to give it a try. I've got just regular water here so we can wet sand it. Again, I've never had to do this before. We didn't have to do that for the airplanes. That was just spray the primer, spray the paint. So we'll learn together. I'm gonna assume that that's all the more we need to sand it. Again, I tried to do a little bit of research for it and dug around, and people even argue whether or not it's supposed to be wet versus dry. But from the general gist that I was seeing, the whole purpose of doing that is just to knock down any imperfections in the paint. So I'm gonna give it a little rinse and we'll let it dry for a bit and see what happens. I'm not sold on that whole sanding thing. I don't know, maybe I did it wrong. It is just a little bit smoother if you run your hand over it. But I guess we'll find out when we hit the top coat. So the sanded side definitely made a difference. Ended up putting another coat and a half on it or so. So from here, the sanded side actually looks worse. But if we get up close to it, there's not as many of these little imperfections. We got about 3.5 coats on there. Took a little bit to figure out the proper spray pattern with the spray paint because it doesn't really have one. But I'm gonna get the sander. I'm gonna wet sand our sanded side with 1000 grit sandpaper, and then we're ready to clear coat it. I did make a little catastrophic error there with my 1000 grit. It doesn't fit on any of the sanders that I've got, not even the hand sander. So I'm just gonna fold it up and try to do a gentle hand sanding across it. It would seem we jumped the gun just a little bit on our sanding. Up here, the paint was not actually cured. I thought I gave it plenty of time. It's been about 45 minutes since we did that last coat and I went in the house. But yeah, I mean, look at this, that whole strip. I've got enough paint that I can try to retouch up this whole side, give it one more coat, but we're gonna have to wait for a while before I can do that. I'll have to let this cure for another couple hours. So another little update for you. Apparently this rust-oleum paint can't handle that isopropyl alcohol. So this has been about 3 hours since we messed up the little bit there. I came back out, put a little bit in the rag and tried to wipe it. And you can see down here, it's pulling it up and smearing it. So in the effort of what I have to do, I'm just gonna attempt to re-spritz over that and put a clear coat on it. And come back to this at a later date for the redemption. We've got our hood put back on. Lessons learned from attempting this myself. One, that sandblaster thing took a lot more effort and a lot more time than expected. Two is the type of rust-oleum that I got is not good for this. This 2X stuff, it's not automotive paint. I don't know what I was thinking with that other than good for outdoor, but I would have been better off spending about the $30 total extra to go to AutoZone or Advanced Auto or one of those and pick up the actual automotive spray paint. I think that would have given us a little bit better results here. We also learned that cure time is really important for spray paint. Well, all paints really. But we definitely boogered that up a couple times, didn't we? Having our materials all together and actually ready would have helped a little bit too. As it stands, this is day 3 of actually messing with this. So take that for what it is. If you try this yourself, you might have that much time in it too. And last real thing that I learned is don't expect professional results if you're not a pro. In my head, I pictured this as, hey, all I gotta do is hold this thing up and give it a psh, 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 and be done with it. And instead we've got a zebra striped hood here. Just for fun, I am going to put a coat of spray wax on it, just to see what that does. Because I'm a Neanderthal and can't figure out how to put a Excel spreadsheet into my video, I had to write it out on paper. My paint cost about $35. I spent roughly $24 for the sand, about $13 for the sandpaper. Buckets usually go for about $5. That sandblaster, I just looked them up. You can find the style I had for $20, or an upgraded version with brass tips and replaceable ends for $30, which if I was going to do it again, I would go with that. My total ranged from 97 to 107, depending on which one of those you want to buy. Now, if you want to go with the sander style, Harbor Freight had their cheapest one was about $25 now. And their cheapest rotary style, the one that seemed to work a lot quicker on that, was now $40 for a total of $102 to $117. But on that, you're going to have extra cost of more sandpaper. If I would have went with actual automotive spray paint, I probably would have had about 130 in it instead of my 97. Forgot to give you the close-up here. By the way, the spray wax wasn't a miracle cure. I mean, even the gloss paint that we put over it's not really shiny. Let me know in the comments what you guys want to see me fail at next. Should we try the more expensive automotive spray can paint? Or you want to see me do an actual sandblaster, you know, the big one, air powered, clean it all back off again and get an actual spray gun and try it that way. I'm willing to try either because I want to know if I can do it better. If you want to see the failure in breaking the windshield, I'll put a link in the description. If you need to know how to take out your squirters on a Toyota, I'll put that in the description too. Other than that, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. We'll see you around next time.